Good morning. I've given myself a challenge to talk for 10 minutes, to not stop, to do it as if I was talking to a friend. If not for a friend, then for my kids, for when they're older and they can look back and see what I was like when I was, how old am I now? 44. I've written down 3 topics that I want to talk a little bit about. And the first one is vibe coding. Today on the news, I was listening to Radio 4, which is my mate's way of telling me that I can tell people that I'm old without telling people that I'm old. Yeah, I wake up every morning and I put the radio on and listen to the news. And this morning they were talking about vibe coding, and they were saying that vibe coding is the Collins Dictionary word of the year. And what does it mean? They explained that it meant using artificial intelligence to use real language to code websites and applications. So if you have no experience with coding, you're no coder, and you want to build an app, then you can get started. They described the kind of app as, what do they say? List all of the movies that are currently on at the cinema and allow me to vote on which ones are the best ones. So something quite basic, and I can totally see how you could build that. And that's great. I think for people who are curious, vibe coding is brilliant. But it's not brilliant all the time. Now, I'm going to tell you a few things about my experience with it. So I started using Cursor maybe 2 months ago. So I'm quite late to the party. I emailed a friend, said, what are the cool kids using to do their vibe coding? I'm going to have a look at this stuff. I don't want to get left behind. I should say I've been coding for 30 years, PHP and JavaScript and doing website design. And I thought I'd give it a go. And in 2 days, I managed to clear around about 10 years of technical debt. And that is brilliant. You can't really imagine how is it that you can just ask a machine to help you to do something, and then literally 2 days later it's done something that you've not got round to. It's not that it was actually 10 years worth of work, but it's debt that had been sat there for 10 years that I hadn't bothered to get round to fixing because it's menial and it's boring and it's not actually going to give me a good return on investment in the app that it belongs to. So I'd left all this code and I decided to try vibe coding, and I got rid of this debt. I just said, right, here's what I want you to do. Here's an example of what I want it to look like. Now migrate all that stuff to over here. And I did it, and it was fantastic. I didn't have any problem for 2 reasons. 1, I know what I'm doing. 2, I was using the Laravel framework. So I was able to train the AI model and say, this is how I want you to code. And so it had a very, very good idea about the structure of that framework. It knows where to put the files. That's one of the brilliant things about Cursor versus something like ChatGPT. Cursor will do multi-file edits. So ChatGPT, you ask it to do stuff, it gives you one answer, and then you copy and paste, and then you test stuff. Cursor will it integrates into a fork of VS Code, and you pay for it just like you would anything else, but it knows how to do multi-file edit. So it can open lots of files, it can read the context of the entire application, and it can perform all these tasks for you, which is amazing. It speeds up a lot of stuff. And I've had great experience using it within Laravel. Like I say, Laravel's a well-documented, very mature framework. On the flip side, I've been doing Cursor work on WordPress, where I'm building plugins to add features. And it did a lot really, really quickly. I was amazed by how quickly I could prototype something and actually have it working. But then I've come back to that project a week or so on, and I'm looking at the structure, and it's just awful. There's no way of saying it. It's just awful. That everything is bunched into one or two files. There's huge amounts of unused code that has not been removed since I started manipulating the model to try and make it tweak my application, to add new features, to revisit stuff, to try different approaches to the same problem. And I think it's because in this instance, WordPress doesn't have any clear model for how I should be using it. I'm building a plugin. There are certain requirements, but I'd already satisfied those with my scaffold. It doesn't, and I could give it some idea of how I wanted it structured, but it makes me realize you have to be super clear about how you want to structure your application in order for the AI to really do a great job. Because ultimately, if once the AI has created your code, you can't skip back into it and add new features manually. If you can't do that, well, then you're beholden to the system. You've just outsourced your entire stuff to that system. And some people will say, that is brilliant. That's exactly what it's for. And I kind of agree. But I wanted to really understand how this system worked. I wanted to be able to improve stuff. I wanted to know and have confidence that everything that I had prescribed was in the application. And it wasn't there. Not everything was there. Not everything was easy to navigate. It was really difficult. And so I set about re-architecting this thing that had been architected for me and telling it, no, I want this class structure. I want you to put those files there. I want you to separate out these HTML chunks for views and put them into this extra folder system over here. Actually, in my mind, I was mirroring Laravel, trying to make it work a bit more like Laravel, have that very sensible structure so that it's familiar and it's easy for you to dive in and know exactly what this does. The way it had been architected, it was just near impossible. So what do I think about it right now? I think it's brilliant. It's very scary, but it's great for bringing to the surface new ideas. It's great for it presents you with a set of options about ways you could approach a problem that perhaps you hadn't thought of. And that's brilliant. I mean, I work on my own. So, and I'm self-taught. I've worked in an agency, I've worked in a startup, I've worked with other people collaboratively, but predominantly I work on my own. And since I started using AI to bounce things backwards and forwards, I found it invaluable. It also, like I say, it surfaces new ideas, new ways of working, and it actually gives you the confidence to delve into it. You could say, right, I can't start that task because actually it's going to take me too long. I don't have all day to spend on that task. The fact that AI works so quickly gives you a bit of a confidence boost to say, I'm going to give this a whirl. I'm going to try and do this task. I can probably get a lot of the way there and I can work out what's working and what's not very quickly. So you try new things. And I think that is wonderful. You know, the idea that you can try these things and that you'll get somewhere. The number of times over the past 30 years I've spent days and days and days and just realized I've gone nowhere. I've learned lots on the way, but I've gone nowhere. I've produced nothing. Actually, AI gets you to the point where you've produced something very quickly. And that's really good. So yeah, vibe coding in a nutshell, what do I think? I think if you can work within a framework that already exists and you can train the model, it's going to be brilliant. If you're in a looser environment, a looser framework where it's not necessarily clear how you should code, you're going to get all sorts of different responses that aren't necessarily going to be easy for you to maintain as you move forward with your application. The next thing I've written down is web design. I've been a web designer since, I would say, 1996 when I first started doing web design. I was still a teenager. I didn't do it professionally for a little while. I went to uni, I got out of uni, and then I would say I started being professional web designer. So that was probably 2004. And I loved it. I have loved every minute of web design. But I'm finding that now I'm in a position where web design is getting boring. That's my 10-minute timer to say I should shut up, but I'm going to carry on because I kind of got into the flow of this. Web design is boring. And that's a big thing for me to say because it's my entire career. I've been building things for the web all the time. The difference, I suppose, is that all the while I've been web designing, building things for the web, it hasn't just been, here's a website. It's always been deeper than that. It's always been, we're building a lead generation website and we need tracking and we need to integrate with other systems. And so whilst from the outset it looks like a 3-page funnel website, there's huge amount of infrastructure that supports it. And that's really exciting. That's really fun because you feel like you're actually putting together, well, a solution. But web design in itself, I'm at a kind of a crossroads with. I feel like AI promises the world. AI promises that people can have websites in seconds. But actually, it doesn't really understand necessarily all the infrastructure that's required. It doesn't understand the business case for anything. It can produce something that looks fancy, that looks polished and professional, but you can almost tell that it's been done with AI. It doesn't necessarily have personality. It doesn't have good branding. It just has learned from everything that's come before it and chosen that those are good things. Right now, we're in the weird transitionary period between a traditional website that works really well, that has the expectation that a human will interact with it, that a human will move the cursor, that a human will type and enter data, and want to be able to consume that data in a really, well, an easy to digest way, something that's pleasurable, something that is maybe memorable because there's brand equity that's required to kind of get people to buy in. But we're in this transitionary phase. We've gone from people using computers to buy products to AI and agents using those same websites to find out data and to provide experiences. And so the experiences at the moment are things like ChatGPT, where you just ask it questions and it's this chat backwards and forwards, just like you're talking to a friend. I think there's a real exciting, fresh, almost, for a technology that promises so much, the interface is actually very minimal. It's unburdened me. When I'm using ChatGPT, it's unburdened me of the cognitive overload, the decision making that I have to do all the time to work out what do I need to look at. If I'm on Google and I'm searching for something, I get this whole screen of data. I get this experience that shows me sponsored ads and it shows me real listings and it shows me colors everywhere and little tiny pieces of information. I have to absorb it all and it's not very clear. ChatGPT is just like, this is your question, this is your answer, you're done. You read it as much as you want to, you refine it. It's a real liberating experience to use that. And I think that's why it's so successful. If it was busy, if it was data intense, and you had to unpick lots of different ways of understanding the answers, it would be really difficult. But actually, you learn how to use it once, and you know how to use it for anything. And I think that's probably its success. But of course, AI doesn't care how your website feels from a design point of view, the visuals, the aesthetics. It doesn't care. It just wants to know the data. And the same way as designers, we've always presented content in a way that is easy to digest. That as you scroll inevitably through a web page, you come across the signpost headings that let you know what you're about to read before you start reading it. And then the clear buttons that show you how to navigate from one section to another. So you can navigate these things quickly, so you can make good progress. AI does not care about those aesthetics. It's a machine. It just reads the structure of the page and it moves on. And if 90% of the way people experience your website in the future is going to be via this minimalist ChatGPT style chat user experience, what's the point in us now making these effectively quite bland service type websites really interesting? What is the point anymore? As long as they've got very clear technical SEO completed, as long as the page is structured in the way that we've always advocating for structuring it, why do we need to worry about the aesthetics, the design, the bit for humans? So I'm at a real transition. I'm really torn about what to do with web design. Sure, I think for a long time people will still use the web, but not necessarily in the way that we expect. People would argue with me that you still need to have everything super neat and tidy, and I would agree. It needs to be easy if a human finds it, but does it need to be all singing, all dancing? Does it need to have amazing animations? Because ChatGPT and AI models, they don't care. They're not going to read those animations and go, ooh, you should definitely choose this service over this service because this service had animations on the website. It's not going to care. It's going to care about what people actually say they're going to do for you. What is your service? How is it going to be used? Why is their service better than anybody else's? Maybe it's because they're actually providing something unique. Maybe it's because it's cheaper. Maybe it's because they've got more availability and they can do the job for you tomorrow. AI cares about that stuff. And you don't need fancy design aesthetics. It still needs to be designed well. It needs to function, but it doesn't need to look pretty anymore. Does it need to work differently on a mobile to on a desktop? I don't know. I'm really, really torn. If someone says to me, can you design a website for me? I'm designing my own. I'm forever designing my own. I always get fed up with it. I never think it's good enough. That's a completely separate topic. But I'm redesigning my own and I have these thoughts, okay, it needs to be easy, but actually, I have so much time. I have a finite amount of time. Do I want to spend that time refining my text, actually explaining better and better and better who I am, what it is I do, about the processes that I use to achieve the things I do? Or do I want to do some CSS animations? Do I want to worry about the colors? Do I want to create multiple versions of this website for every device from a mobile to a huge screen? Do I want to do that? Is there any return on investment in me spending my time in that way? Or is my next client going to come from a ChatGPT search where someone just said, find me a web designer, and it pops up with my name and it says, yep, Si's a web designer, been doing it for years, knows what he's doing. Click here to book a call. They may never even see my website. So are we in this position? I guess this is the point. Are we in the position now where we are transitioning what websites are? Are websites now just directories of content that nobody actually visits other than a machine? Or is there another 10, 15 years where we're going to have interesting, clever, emotive websites that people actually want to use? Or with the advent of AI and these one-click website design systems, are all websites going to look the same? Are they all going to have animations that nobody put any heart and soul into? Nobody cared about whether they fit with the brand. That's just how you do a website. The same way, I guess, as how most houses look exactly the same, because we've just productized the whole thing. I don't know the answer. And I really am struggling with the direction to go, because I love the creative outlet that you get from web design. I was an artist forever, a designer when I was in school until I learned about the internet. And ever since then, I've been a web designer. And it combines all the things that I find enjoyable: art and maths, systems, building. All of that stuff is enjoyable. And now the aesthetic side of things, the art side of things, is going to just disappear. Or is it? Because on the flip side of all of everything I've said, web is at an incredible position. Web is in this amazing position where it can do basically anything. You don't need to have a native app anymore. You don't need to have a native game. Everything can work through the browser. Everything. And we use the browser for everything already. So on one side, you've got websites that provide data, that advertise people's services. On the other side, you've got huge technologies that can provide experiences. And those experiences aren't going to just be experienced via the ChatGPT proxy. They're not going to be just represented by, oh yeah, you want to play this game that's really cool that you should definitely use. They're going to be told about it, sure, maybe by ChatGPT, but they're not going to experience it through that. Whereas if you're searching for a plumber, who cares what their website looks like? Should they even care? As long as they've got all the listings in the right places and they've got the reviews, as long as they can be trusted. I guess that's the real key, isn't it? It's like, how can somebody be trusted? Are we just putting all our faith into customer reviews and saying, if they've got customer reviews, that's fine? And if we do that, are we taking away that notion that you might both be brilliant, but you're more my cup of tea? I would rather you came to my house to do the job because we have a bit of a better connection. How do you get that human element back into the mix? And maybe that is an argument for keeping websites. But then you could just do a video. Straightforward text, video at the top. Then people can see who you are. ChatGPT could even just deliver a little avatar based on you having done your videos. So yeah, it's a real transition. I'm definitely struggling with it in my mind. I'd be interested to see what other people think. Are all web designers sitting there just worried that they're going to lose their jobs to AI? Are they still fighting? Are they learning how to utilize AI, much like I am, using Cursor to actually speed up the process of building websites and solutions for people? What is it people are actually doing? So I'd like to know. But that brings me having spoken for a long time already, to my third point, which is, I've already alluded to this, I work alone most of the time. And it hasn't always been that way. For a long time, I was in an office, a conventional way. I then worked in a startup. I loved banter. I loved the jokes. I loved all that stuff. And I loved working with other people. And I thought that would probably still carry on. And for a long time it did, since I freelanced. But now, more and more, I work on my own. And I guess it's one of the reasons I've decided to just make this video. I've taught all this time. Maybe I've published this, I don't know if I will, but I've talked all this time. I think it's really useful to talk, to clarify your position, to clarify your own thinking. I mean, people say, you should write stuff down, but I don't really have the time to write stuff down. I've realized this with my friend who always voice notes me. He never texts me any messages. He always voice notes, and it's because he can do it while he's walking. He doesn't need to press the keys, and it's possible. You just record audio, you press the button, the other person hears your voice, they can understand where you are, whether you're in a good mood or a bad mood, and that's a really cool technology. That's something that we're able to do now that we weren't previously. But going back to what I was saying, people say you should write stuff down. If you can write it down, it actually clarifies your thinking. But I think maybe making a video also can clarify your thinking. Actually speaking about it like you would in an office actually helps to make sense of where you are, how you feel about stuff. So that's why I'm possibly going to carry on doing this kind of video. I might push this online. I might not. The point, though, is to work out how I feel about things. And I guess the bonus of pushing it online would be that maybe other people would watch and they might actually contact me. They might not. They might stick a whole load of horrible comments on, which is, likely. I used to have a Twitter account. I think I still probably do, before it became X. And from 2008 to 2018, I loved Twitter. It was the best thing ever. I loved how you could talk about stuff, you could meet people. But I feel like we're in a position now where I don't want to do that, because people will slate you for different ideas. They'll not allow that freedom of speech. And I miss that kind of camaraderie that you got from being involved with other people. It made life less lonely. I'm not saying I'm lonely, but I do spend a lot of time alone. And the more that I just engage with AI, the more that I'm trying to do work, the less I'm spending with people. And ultimately, that's surely what life is about, is spending time with other people and not just in a small office. But that's why I'm making a video, to see what I think. So there you go. I don't know how long I've talked for now. Too long. But yeah, if I do post this, thanks for coming along for the journey. Bye.